right, let's start the recording. Hi, everyone. Pam Souter here, your Chief Networking Officer with Networks Global. Welcome tonight. This is our Show Me the Money Zoom, and I couldn't think of a better way to come to you tonight since it is Memorial Day, and I've got some beautiful people on the Zoom with me tonight that in some way, shape, or form, this is big to their hearts, or they wouldn't be here with me today because it is Friday afternoon and it's the weekend. And so, hey, let's start with Chad. Chad, how are you?
I'm well, Pam. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. So, Chad, when you think of Memorial Day, what do you think of?
Well, I think of all the people out there that are fighting every single day to protect our country. And, I served 11 years, so I have my share of friends and peers that pay the ultimate price. And so it's a great weekend and day to remember what they did and just to kind of reflect on all the men and women who have served the country and what they've gone through so that we can still have our freedom today.
And, that's what I think about. Of course, I had my father and Dave's father both serve, and not during wartime, which was, obviously wonderful for them. However, I know that you experienced that firsthand, and then because of it works, you were able to leave the military. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's important for people to hear too, that you had that option, but that you still have brothers and sisters out there in the field working for the military.
Definitely. And the biggest thing is when you're in the military, you never think, we never think the catastrophe or the bad thing is going to happen to us personally. So, I was going through the military and kind of just felt like other people are going to deal with that, but I don't have to deal with that. And the crazy, interesting thing is I went through officer school training in the summer, right before the summer of 2012. And I was gone training for a deployment in the summer of 2012 when I got the word that one of my close buddies that I just trained with had just been in Afghanistan 3 days, paid the ultimate price. And that hit really close to home. And for me at that point, I started, because I was a lifer at that point in my life in the military. And I had to ask myself for the first time, what would it look like if that happened to me? What was that going to do for my wife and for my kids? And I had to face that and ask those questions. And that's when I started questioning, should I spend another, at that point in time, 10 more years in the military? And within days of that is when my wife saw her first before and after picture. So the timing was just crazy. And I look back now and I just see how God orchestrated that transition for us to happen so smoothly. And, I still stay in touch with a lot of guys that have gone on and they're still in the military the last 5-6 years. And some of my closest friends, that's their calling in life. They're going to do 20, 25 years. They absolutely love it. They love serving. And what I can tell you is when they say you're a soldier 24/7, they mean it. And that's a sacrifice. So I give kudos to all the people that still serve and have served. And it takes a lot. I mean, it's a very, very important profession for sure.
Well, we've got quite a few that are a part of It Works Global, and that's why we wanted to give back to them tonight. So for those wives that have husbands still in the military, they're working at Works, we have a huge team in Germany, and I love it. They're on the base there. What could you say to them about persevering and working through this time in their life, this season?
Well, there's so many parallels. I love my military friends because there's so many similarities. So many of the things that you see people that are successful in the military are the same traits that you see people that are successful in It Works. And it's just it's having this resolve. It's this perseverance in the military. When you have a mission, the mission gets done. I mean, and you learn that. You might enter into the military and think, well, we'll try and see if we can accomplish the mission, but when you're in the military, you stay up as late as it takes. You get up as early as it takes. You go days without sleeping. You get stretched way out of your comfort zone. They train us when we're not at war, so that with stressors involved, so that when we are at war, that it's nothing new. You're kind of used to it. So I love that, and that's why we have a big team ourselves. There's a lot of military people, and I just love what military people bring to the table because they do have resolve. They can adapt. They can go through changes. I mean, when you're in the military, you have to get used to moving every 2 or 3 years, and you don't even have a choice. They could say, hey, you're going to Alaska in the middle of winter. And you just go, okay, what date do we have to report there? You get to tell them no.
I've been asked to go to Alaska at work, so I'm like, okay, that would be a great place to go. But I know a lot of times you didn't have the option. You had to go at whatever the weather was. I love that, those parallels. I love people that get things done, that do what they say they're going to do. So that's great training. And, I wanted to say something. I wrote it down. Samantha, Kaylin, and Anthony, I know we all love and appreciate them. They were going to be on today, and they couldn't due to travel. And, Anthony said he's been in the military he had been in the military for 10 years, and he had over 20 that didn't make it through, either through the military or suicide after they came home. So we just wanted to give our hearts and prayers out to those that served and their families. And, it's so hard to talk about because of what happens even after you come home, and things are different, and your world has really been shaken. So Chad, you're just such an awesome leader. Thank you so much. And is there any final words that you would like to say to everyone that's listening tonight?
I guess what I'd like to say is just, we're honoring our military today for Memorial Day, and we're remembering what they've done and the fight. They've been in the fight. And the craziest thing about people in the military, they're serving not just for themselves and for their families, they're serving their brothers and their sisters on their left and on their right. And it's just the fight, and the fight is worth it. I mean, it's the whole idea of being in the game and not being a spectator. And I love that so much about It Works, because we have the same opportunity to fight for our freedom and fight for our team's freedom. It's just fighting in a different way, but it's worth it. It's worth it to do it every day. And so anyone listening to this, I just encourage you to find out what you're fighting for and don't stop. Just keep going.
Yeah. I was talking to someone today. He came by this morning really early to do some work on the house, and he's married to a doctor, female doctor. And he said his friends say all the time, "Oh, you're so lucky you married a doctor." He said, "Well, I will be, but right now we're in several $100,000 worth of debt." And I'm like, whoa, you don't even think about that for people. That's student loans from getting that doctorate, and it's going to take a lot of years to pay that off before they start to see the end results. And we could help them achieve that with It Works. So that's what we're all about: freedom, fun, friendship. So I'm glad that we've had all this fun together, Chad, and we're free together, and we're just developing a bigger relationship all along the way. So hugs to you, Jeree, and all the babies. So thank you for being on today. Hang out with us a little bit longer, and if you want, you can mute. So we'll get on to the next, which is Jen. Hi, Jen. Welcome.
Hey. Hello.
How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
Yeah. Are you feeling good today?
I am. I'm feeling great today.
All right. So you've got a couple personal battles going on here, but let's first get back to Memorial Day here. So give us a little insight as to your story and what you could share with us today.
Well, actually 5 years ago tomorrow, so November 12th, 2012, I had been in It Works for about 9 months when my daughter, I'm going to try to keep it together, she got the knock on the door that no military wife wants to get, and her husband had actually on Veterans Day, but he was in Afghanistan, so they notified her at 9 a.m. on the 12th that her, or Memorial Day, I'm sorry, or actually it was Veterans Day, sorry, November 12th, 2012. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she got that knock on the door that no one wants to get, and her husband was killed in Afghanistan and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And so during that time, I had been in It Works 9 months. I was a triple diamond at the time, and I have never had family come around me like my It Works family did. And they still are today, 5 years later. And my husband, Nick, was a pilot at the time, and just 2 months before had hung up his pilot uniform for good, which was all God's plan to have him there with my daughter and with us during this time that we lost Matt. And so what a blessing to really have true freedom, to be there. His funeral was states away in Washington State. So we packed up our motorhome and drove from Kansas to Washington State and stayed there for several weeks with our children, just to be with his family, to help with the arrangements, to be there for the funeral. And so it works. If it wasn't for It Works, honestly. And my daughter promoted the next month, I think, to double diamond and got a bonus the month after her husband was killed. So it's just a blessing all the way around.
You know, our daughter just celebrated a marriage, and I looked out at all the people there, and so many had been with us because of It Works for a decade. You know, and they know Kay. They grew up. They watched her grow up, and I love this family that we've created with It Works. And I know a lot of people out there looking think it's cliche or it's not true, but it is true. I mean, they're first there to battle for you, and I know that. Right now, also, you've got a personal battle with your health, but you're pulling through, and you look amazing. So just talk a little bit about that and how that, because a lot of life happens, and a lot of times people just stop doing what they're doing and focus in on that life. But you've let it catapult you to even a bigger level here. I can see that in you, almost not a sense of urgency, but a sense of completion, and let's have fun with this. So share that with us right now.
I think, I was diagnosed with breast cancer last December, and so I decided to go to an alternative clinic in Arizona, where I spent 2 months away from my husband and 7 of my 8 kids. It was tough being alone out there, but during that time I didn't feel great all the time, but I still had the freedom, first of all, to go spend 2 months down there. That's huge. And to have my husband be able to not be working a job and be able to stay home with my kids and take care of them, that's everything right there. And second of all, for the financial part, none of it's covered on insurance. So for It Works to help out there. Third of all, I was still able to sign, I think, 7 distributors, 7 or 8, during the 2 months I was there. So it just proved to me, because I'll be honest, I was down on myself. I'm like, how am I going to go through this battle? How am I going to still work this business when I'm not feeling the best and when I'm, away from my family? But God provides. And every time I got that little niche in my head that was the devil on this shoulder, God would be on this shoulder, and he'd send somebody that wanted to hear about this business. And I signed a girl that lived in Arizona, that actually attended boot camp with me. And I know you got to meet her, Pam, when we were there. And so I never stopped, because this is the vehicle that transformed my life and the lives of 8 children and the lives of my daughter who lost her husband. I mean, I'm loyal to it till forever. That's all I can say. And just, God's just all around it, sending people that I wasn't even that close to, that were teammates, sideline sisters in Arizona, to, just be by my side to go through this journey with me. And so It Works is just, I can't even put it into words. I mean, I know everybody says that, but it's really true. You just can't. It's a family and freedom. That's just what it's all about for me.
Well, we've loved getting to know you and Nick and your family, and I've met several of the kids, not all of them. So we just love that your perseverance and what you're doing to build your life and your team. You've always been there for everybody, and now they're there for you. So congratulations on that. And I know you're licking this, and it's done, and life is going to be beautiful for you, as it always has been. So thanks for joining in tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pam.
All right, now we're going to take it out to Blair and Melody McFarland. Hello, how are you?
Awesome. Doing good.
Well, it's so great to have you. You've got a little different perspective on this. And Melody reached out and said, Blair, that you had something you would love to share with us tonight. So I can't wait to hear this. So please start.
Yeah, I mean, I was never in, the military. My dad was too young at World War II time. He was like 13, 14 years old. I did have an uncle who flew in Burma, in the Japanese theater, and was shot down. And captured my Uncle Larry. And then Melody's dad, he flew in the B-17 bombers, and they had to fly 26 missions to be able to earn their way to go home. And at that time, you were lucky if you flew 9 missions. 26 was almost impossible. But he did. He flew 26 missions, and then he re-upped and did it again. So we look at, through Melody's side of the family, it's just a miracle that she's here, because it's a miracle her dad survived the war at that time. But, I look at Memorial Day. My dad was Canadian, and I was the first child in our whole family born in America. But my dad was a true patriot, man. He got his naturalized citizenship, had an American flag on his truck, and just so proud of America. I remember being a teenager and, rabble-rouse or troublemaker, but him just trying to tell me over and over, there's no place in the world like the U.S. of A. There's nobody's got what we've got here in America and the freedoms that we have. And like Chad was saying, those freedoms come from a lot of people who put their life on the line and are still putting their life on the line for us to have this opportunity to live in this great country. And I saw a documentary on World War II when they were invading Normandy, when June 6, 1944. The war had been going on for about 5 years in Europe, and they were going to start the second front coming into France. So it's the Canadians, British, Australians, and Americans. They stormed that beach June 6th with thousands and thousands of men, and the worst of it was on Omaha Beach. 2,000 of those guys were just mowed down, slaughtered within the first hour and a half. They'd already lost 2,000 men. And it was so bad, they were wondering whether they should send in more guys or just scrap that part of the beach and go to one of the other beaches like Utah or Gold Beach or one of the other ones. And some of the guys that survived it were telling the story, and they said they looked down the way, they were all hunkered up against the seawall, the ones that were still alive. And they saw an older guy had a cigar in his mouth, chomping a cigar and barking at a bunch of guys around him that couldn't really hear what he was saying at the time. But then they realized he was trying to rally those guys and say, look, there's only 2 kinds of guys that are on this beach, those that are dead and those that are going to be dead. So we have no choice. We just got to, get up the seawall and attack those guns. And at that time, the Germans had invented a machine gun called an MG-42. Mm-hmm. And that thing could spit out 25 bullets a second. I'm not talking a minute, 25 bullets a second. That thing was so lethal. It was just literally cutting people in half, sawing them in half. But those guys did, man. They got it together, and they stormed that beach up that seawall, and they took that Omaha Beach. And that was the start, of the retaking of Europe in June 1944. So I look at that like I didn't know any of those people, and I don't think any of them were even in my family, but we all owe so much to those young guys, those young heroes that did what they did for people they didn't even know, in families that they didn't even know were going to be, to help, free the world from Nazism and fascism and give us all this great chance to live in America. So Memorial Day, you got to remember those guys.
We do, and we can't take anything for granted. When you hear that story, I remember watching that documentary, and I also remember watching several movies on that. It's very, very moving. Now we're open in Europe. We love our Europe family, and I'm just so glad that now we can love each other and not go back into those times and into that torturous times for those families. So, Melody, when you think about all the personal battles that you've had, you've lost a lot of family members to just both you and Blair, and just how do you persevere through this? How do you keep moving forward? Because if there's anybody that has been through a lot, I can think of both of you.
Well, Pam, it is only through the grace of God. Without God, we wouldn't be able to look at tomorrow. And it's a choice. Blair and I made a choice a while back after we lost Lisa, our daughter, and we said, you know what, we're still alive and we have a choice. We can either choose to live or not live. And by not living, I don't mean dying, but just not living life. And we chose that. We knew that, she would be devastated to know that we didn't go on with our life, that we didn't live life to the fullest, because we're only here for a short amount of time when you compare it to, eternity in heaven. And so, losing other family members, that just kind of all puts it into perspective that, it is a loss, and we can't ever, belittle that, or not, belittle's not the word, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Just forget it. We can't ever
Yeah, we can't forget that. And, but we have so much more to look forward to. And so that's what we had to decide, was that, this is just a tiny, 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 tiny speck of time compared to eternal life. And so that is a comfort for us. We still have days when we miss our family and we miss our daughter, especially. We have those days. And you're just never going to have a time that there wouldn't be days like that. I mean, that's just a part of our life now. That's just, there's before loss and there's after loss. And, but you really do have a choice of how you're going to handle it and how you're going to get through. And life is still good, despite the hurt, despite everything that is wrong about our world today and about our country or anything that is going on. Life is still good. And we can choose to live it, or we can choose to wallow in all the things that are wrong. But for Blair and I, we chose to just live it and live it to the fullest, because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, if we don't go out and impact other people's lives, then what good was our life? What did we do here? And so for us, we just choose to keep on moving, keep on going.
I love it. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. We so appreciate it. Chad, do you want to add anything before we close the Zoom out?
I just want to say, this just kind of popped in my head, and I love that Melody was talking about that it's a choice. Joy is a choice. Happiness, I think the root word of that means happenings, mean things are going to happen, that are good or bad. And so that's, happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes, but joy is a daily choice. You hear the song, "This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad it is," right? So just every day waking up and saying, today I'm going to be joyful, because we can make that decision. And I was just thinking of my brother. My brother was in the Marines. This was over 10 years ago, and he was working his daily shift. And one day, for whatever reason, he switched shifts with another person. And, his job, he was a helicopter mechanic, but they would go in and they would find the friendlies and the enemies who were injured or had died, and they would load them up in the helicopter and they would take them to where they needed to go. So that was his daily job, just what he had to deal with day in and day out. And this one particular day, he changed shifts. And that day, the old shift he was on, they went up, and that helicopter got shot down. Every single person on that helicopter died, and my brother was the only survivor. And so he's been dealing with that still to this day. A decade later, he's going through, he has a hard time dealing with that. And so when you guys hear of prior service or people who have served, just listen closely to what they're saying, because just sometimes a simple phone call, a simple just reaching out and loving them on a little bit could be the difference for some of those people between life and death. So I recently reached out to Anthony Keeneland, actually, because my brother's been going through another level of stuff that's kind of started from way back when that happened, just to get advice, because I know Anthony's gone through a lot of different things with his friends, and it just comes really close to home for him, and dealt with stuff himself. He gave me some amazing advice. I took it and I reached out to my brother and did some of it. And just a couple of days ago, my brother called me up and he said he wanted to have some serious conversations and get very transparent with where his mind's at and get some help and stuff. So I'm just thank you, Pam, first of all, for this Zoom. And thank you for the service members that are watching this, present or past, and just appreciate the service. And I love working with my military. Whenever I hear somebody military needs to talk, I'm like, whatever's going on, we need to talk, because they got a special place in my heart for sure.
Well, I love what you just said about just a phone call, a hug. We give back to wounded warriors. We're big into giving back to them. And I also love this. I was just the other day in the airport, and a couple military guys came through Starbucks. So I bought them coffee. I mean, just, I bought lunches, breakfast, coffee, just anything like that, just to show your love and appreciation can go a long way in somebody's life. So thank you all for being on. I know Jen just dropped off, but I love this. This was amazing. So, mwah. Bye, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend, and we'll see you all week. Come see us in Florida in June. We can't wait for green carpet. And every mom is going to